Good afternoon. Welcome to EHJMP News, your education news leader. Today on our broadcast, we are wrapping up our 6-day special on comprehension strategies identified by Stephanie Harvey and Ann Godvis in their comprehension toolkit. Yesterday, we discussed the strategy of having students determine the importance of text. The 6th and final strategy, the one that we will be discussing today, is summarize and synthesize. Before we dive deep into the details behind this comprehension strategy, we first need to understand the difference between these two commonly confused terms, summarize and synthesize. When students summarize a text, they are pulling together information in order to highlight the key details and important parts of the text according to what the author wrote. Summarizing demonstrates an understanding of the overall meaning of the text. Meanwhile, synthesizing nudges readers to see the bigger picture, to think about their thinking, and to organize their learning in order to share it with others. Synthesizing utilizes a variety of comprehension strategies, including asking questions, inferring, determining what's important to understand big ideas. According to Cummins and Stallmeyer, students that synthesize move from simply recalling facts in the text to considering how the author's compilation of these facts conveys a big idea. Essentially, synthesizing is combining new ideas with what was read to get something new and different. Now that we understand the differences between summarizing and synthesizing, let's learn about the best practices of literacy instruction used in summarizing and synthesizing. Jana and Emily are in the field in an elementary classroom to report.
Thank you, Hannah. I'm reporting on Miss Uten's 3rd grade class. To start our modeling in her classroom, we'll first learn what Harvey and Godvis have to say about best practices in summarize and synthesize. This process can be put into practice along with 5 other strategies that we have uncovered over the past few days. More importantly, in summarize and synthesize, students are learning to think beyond text in order to answer questions, as stated in their book. For all of our viewers, we will be seeing excerpts from Miss Uten's 3rd grade classroom demonstrating the best practices for summarize and synthesize with 5 basic steps that align with a gradual release of responsibility.
As I incorporate the summarize and synthesize comprehension strategy in my classroom, I'm able to integrate different strategies that tailor to each one of my students to practice this technique. You'll be able to see the students using anchor charts as we research the planets in the solar system. It's more active and engaging for each student, and each student is responsible and able to demonstrate the summarization of the facts of the planets, and then synthesize that information to get an overall picture of the topic. Harvey and Godvis demonstrate this practice by expressing the importance of connecting and engaging students as we model the expectations of each lesson or activity. Once the students develop an understanding, we can guide and allow for a collaboration to be present among the students in the classroom.
First is to connect and engage with the students. This can be done by verbally stating the objectives in kid-friendly and exciting terms. In order to engage the students in the writing process, have a group discussion about the topic that they will be writing about later on in the day.
3rd grade, let's review the planets that we discussed earlier this week. Who can tell me all of the planets in our solar system?
Next step is for the teacher to model the lesson content. In completing a writing lesson, the teacher could share his or her thoughts from a book that the class has read. He or she would share the information in his or her own words and could start the writing prompt within this part of the lesson.
Can someone tell me a fact they remember from the story that I read to you that was titled Our Solar System? Hannah.
Mercury is the closest to the sun.
Very good. I'm glad you remembered that. Today you'll be doing some more research on the planets in our solar system. You will be using Google to conduct your research.
The mini lesson portion of the lesson could be labeled as the guide section. The teacher could use many different manipulatives, such as an anchor chart like Miss Uten did in her classroom.
So as a group today, you'll receive sticky notes and you'll write a fact about the planet that you were given. And as a whole class, we will come up to the board and place our sticky note under a specific planet, and then at the end we will create a big list on our anchor chart of the big main points that we think that is important of the solar system.
Once the students understand the writing lesson, they will work collaboratively with a small group to enhance their knowledge. The writing summarizes what the students have created individually or with a small group that will later be shared with the class as part of the Share the Learning process in the best practices.
The group who did Mercury, can you review what you found when you researched?
We found that Mercury was the closest to the sun, that it was the smallest planet, and that its orbit is only 87 days.
Okay, very good. Now, out of these 3 facts that you found, which do you think is the most important?
I think that it's most important that Mercury is the closest to the sun, because that would make sense that its orbit is only 87 days, so it takes less time for it to go around the sun. And I don't think that it's really important to know that it's the smallest planet. So I'd say closest to the sun.
Okay, I like your explanation. So we'll move this fact over to our anchor chart. Good job.
Thank you, Emily, for showing us how summarizing and synthesizing is used in your classroom. According to Green, comprehension can be developed through other various summarizing activities. For teachers at home, try these in your classroom. Have the students arrange pictures in order that they occurred in the text, create an outline of the story, write news headlines about the story, create a news broadcast, write sticky notes to summarize. For synthesizing, encourage students to view reading like a puzzle that they must fit all together. As students read, have them use these phrases to synthesize the information that they have learned. Now, I understand that. This gives me an idea. That leads me to believe. Now this changes everything. Truly, the options of using this in your classroom are limitless. Back to you, Hannah.
Thank you, Special Reporter Jana, along with Miss Newton. We appreciate that inside look at summarizing and synthesizing. Now we will go to Mike Kaleni, Curriculum Planner, to explain how this comprehension strategy aligns to Common Core standards.
Common Core state standards are standards that describe what students should be able to know in grades pre-K to grade 12. Standards provide the targets for instruction and students' learning essential for success in not just ELA classrooms, but in all academic areas. Schools will use standards to develop their curriculum based on the students' needs. However, standards are not the curriculum. Teachers should use the standards as a foundation for their lessons, aligning lessons to standards to make them meaningful and give purpose. According to the National Governors Association Center for Best Practices, the standards leave room for teachers, curriculum directors, and states to determine how standards should be reached. Teachers are thus free to provide students with whatever tools and knowledge the professional judgment and experience identify as most helpful for meeting the goals set out in the standard. When students use the summarize and synthesize comprehension strategy, they are meeting a variety of Common Core standards. One example of a standard that contains summarizing and synthesizing is in the 4th grade standard found in the PA Common Core for English Language Arts. 1.2 Reading Informational Text. Determine the main idea of the text and explain how it is supported by key details. Summarize the text. This, however, is just one standard that could be used in the summarizing lesson. As mentioned earlier in our broadcast, synthesizing encompasses many other comprehension strategies, such as asking questions, inferring, and determining what's important to understanding big ideas. With each of these strategies comes another Common Core standard. When planning lessons, always remember to use Common Core state standards as a foundation. Back to you, Hannah.
Thanks, Mike. Now let's find out which developmental phase of literacy best aligns with summarizing and synthesizing. Now we go to Paige, who's an expert on the developmental phase of literacy.
I'm Paige Prabhahala, the expert on developmental stages of literacy. Marie Clay and Fontes and Pinnell have noted 4 main developmental stages of literacy: emergent, early, transitional, and self-extending. At first, one may think the transitional stage is the most appropriate for the comprehension strategy that we have learned today, summarizing and synthesizing. But according to Reading Horizons, students in this stage are making the change, or transition, from learning to read to reading to learn. The stage the comprehension strategy would be most appropriate for is self-extending readers. These students often read a variety of textual genres and use reading as a tool for gaining new knowledge or building upon existing knowledge. These readers range in age from 6 to 9 years of age. Since students are more sophisticated readers, they're able to use the skills of summarizing text and synthesizing the big ideas.
Thanks, Paige. Throughout this broadcast, we have learned in depth the comprehension strategy of summarizing and synthesizing. Summarizing is simply recalling the text, while synthesizing is going beyond the text and understanding the big idea. We have seen a classroom example of summarizing and synthesizing, and also using the gradual release of responsibility. Lastly, we aligned these comprehension strategies to the important Common Core standards and a literacy phase of development. Now it is time for you, the viewers in Dr. Meyer's class, to put this strategy in action. Your job is to create a magazine cover that summarizes and synthesizes the information that you have learned today. This is a concept that is adapted from Asaph and Garza. You will be given a large sheet of paper and markers. You will be working in groups for this project. Listen closely for your group. Group 1, Hannah E., Amanda D., and Mariah. Group 2, Carla, Kara, and Olivia. Group 3, Ashlyn, Marin, and Lauren. And Group 4, Brittany, Amanda S., Clara, and Dr. Myers. This is Hannah signing off from EHJMP News.